There's a growing inequality in the music industry that nobody is addressing. Despite the promise of artistic, independent freedom, artists are just as trapped as they always have been. It's just different gatekeepers. Whether it's music DSPs, labels, or just content creation platforms, these are just different middlemen. Streaming has always been sold as artists' ticket to freedom, and to some extent it is, but Spotify's top 1% get 90% of all of the streams. I mean, that paints a picture. I work with several artists that have over 50 million streams, and many of them are still struggling to even pay their rent. Now, that's not to say you can't make a lot of money from streaming, but it does mean you have to play the streaming game. It means you have to be perfectly set up to be able to make enough money from streaming, and it isn't as simple as having a couple of songs that you've put out in the hope that you will get hundreds of millions of streams per month in order to make a living. Now, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know about streaming, but what about other revenue streams? Like touring, for example. Well, touring is just not the answer anymore. Back in the day, touring would promote music, which means going on tour didn't actually make you that much money, but touring would promote your new music to your audience, who then would get off their ass and go to town, go to the store and buy your music on vinyl or CD, which would have a decent markup. But then, as ticket prices increased, it meant that artists were able to make a good amount of money from touring whilst also looking after their fan base. That is, if they had a decent-sized audience. But now, touring seems to be a passion project. Check this piece of content from Kate Nash. Kate Nash has had a #1 single with her song Foundations, and this is what she's got to say about it.
I think that it's going to collapse. It's unsustainable. And we're creating a world where we're saying we don't want diversity or working class people in music because they won't be able to afford to do it. You'll notice that like a lot of artists and bands, it's already happening. So many tours are being cancelled. Tours have been cut in half. You know, what was standard was about like 28 shows in a tour. Now it's like 14. If I'm not doing 14, it's much less for a lot of people. And you'll see that like artists are saying, we just cannot financially make this work, even if we're driving the van ourselves.
So if that's the struggles for an artist who had a #1 single, how about the DIY artist? Meanwhile, the Taylor Swift Eras Tour has just broken all records and has been the first tour to surpass $2 billion for one tour. And then there's merch. Merch is also not going to save the plight of the artists because overheads have gone up so much over the last few years, whether that's shipping or postage. If you sell a t-shirt, for example, for $30, which is a fair price for a t-shirt, albeit if it's logoed with your artist's name on it, with all of the different fees and subscription costs, potentially some advertising and tax, you'll be lucky to make $5 profit off that tee. Now, if you think about that from a minimum wage perspective, it means you probably have to sell about 100 tees every single week to make minimum wage. Now, can you make money from selling tees? Of course. Can you make money from streaming? Of course. Can you make money from touring? Of course. But what we're talking about here is a consistent amount of money every single month. Why should you, as an artist, have, a flurry of income in maybe the summer months when you can do some festivals? Or why should you have a flurry of income around Christmas when people want to buy some tees or some hoodies? At the moment, what we're seeing here is a massive inequality where the top 1 to 5% are taking all of the revenue, including all of the middlemen. Meanwhile, all of the artists that are struggling on a day-to-day basis to get their music out are having to pay for more things, more studio time. They're having to pay for more promotion. They have to pay for more production. They have to pay for more people. Going on tour is more expensive than ever, and it's becoming more and more of a passion project for more DIY artists. It feels like over the last couple of years, artists finally had some control, only for it to get rescinded as more middlemen, tech giants and the music industry start to claw it all back again. But this is nothing new. If you got signed back in the 80s, 90s or possibly 2000s, there was a good chance that the gatekeepers, the powers that be that signed you, probably took all of the money anyway. And then if you got an option to go into a second, a third or a fourth deal, it's not like you were recouping. And even if you were, they'd only get you on the next time round. So the powers that be taking all of your money, taking all of your control, the inequality in the music industry is nothing new. The problem now is you're getting all of the problems because you're having to do all of the work and you're not getting any of the rewards, which is a very different thing. You know, back in the day, you'd say, look, I'm handing this over to the powers that be when it comes to the A&R, the distribution, the manufacturing, the promotion, the marketing, and they're doing all of that stuff, and I get to be able to play as a rock star. And that makes complete sense that you're handing a massive chunk of change across to the people that know how to do this. But then, when it goes the other way around, when you just say, hang on, I'm doing all of this is all the stuff that I'm doing, I'm in control, I'm the entrepreneur, I'm marketing, I'm promoting, I'm selling, I'm having to make the content, I'm having to make the music, I'm having to pay for the whole thing. Where's the money? Like, where is it for me? Hey gang, we're going back to the video in just a minute, but I wanted to tell you about DK Music Business Academy. This is a platform that I have created for artists that are serious about their music. There are over 100 hours worth of lessons, and with every course comes a workbook, checklist, templates, tips, tricks, and strategies that myself and my team use every single day when helping artists and labels from around the world. And not only that, but there's a lot more detail involved in the courses than I have in other social media platforms. In reality, if I go into too much detail in a YouTube video, it does damage retention because most people just don't have that much time or attention to detail. So if you're struggling to get the attention on your music that it deserves, just think how powerful this could be for your music and your music career. And at the price of just one Big Mac burger per week, you'll get access to all of my tools, my techniques, my strategies that myself and my team use, as well as access to myself and my team in the community. So don't struggle on your own, get the help that you need to get your music heard. There's a link in the description, and I look forward to seeing you in DK Music Business Academy. So we know the chips are stacked against you as an artist, but what can be done? Well, firstly, we have to not play that music industry game, because the music industry wants you to do the work, and therefore what it's looking for is it's looking for mass amounts of numbers on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, so that it can see that it works, so it can then start to bring you in, scale you, spit you out the other end. But the reality is even if you do that, it's not necessarily a lot of money in it for you, whether that's merch or touring or anything else. But there is another way, which is we need to go back to basics. We need to take the power back of the community. This is the most important thing that we have lost in the last probably 2.5 years. With the rise of platforms like TikTok, Instagram Reels, where everything has been about discovery, because we lost it for so long, we can now get discovery of new people every single time that we post, which is amazing. But that's become the game. And it's the wrong game, not only because there's more and more noise out there, because there's higher standards out there, because there's more artists doing it, but also because now we have a chance to actually chat to people, to actually engage with people on a one-to-one basis on every single day. Artists have to stop focusing on mass reach. And yes, we do need discovery. And yes, we do need some kind of organic reach. But what is the point in getting 10, 20, 30, 50,000 views on a piece of content that you have slaved over for you to get 10, 20, 30 comments of people saying, this is amazing, well done you, thank you very much, for those people to be completely ignored? We have to sift for gold. This is like fishing. We throw the rods out. We have to try and get a nibble. But when we get it, that's when we have to go to work. And what we're seeing right now is we are playing the corporate game. If we play the corporate game, which is the record label game, in order to get a record deal, you can't complain because we are playing the game that they want you to do. Whereas if we can get a small/moderate fan base of maybe, the classic 1,000, but I don't even think it's that. But if we can get a small to moderate fan base who genuinely care about you, who genuinely want to support you, and they like you for more than just the music and are willing to put some money into this, then there are ways of making money. And it doesn't just have to be selling your soul or even throwing out merch where the companies are getting 80% for you to get the 20%. There are still ways of making $100,000 a year from your music, but only if we have the right strategy and we are building around community. Community is where everything starts, and it isn't mass reach. Right now, you cannot compete with the music industry itself because they hold all the cards. They've got all of the money. Unless you're going to throw 200, 300 grand into radio tours, unless you are going to do these loss leaders on tours, unless you are going to put money into ads, which could potentially be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to compete with attention. So if we try and do that, we will struggle. But what we can do is we can be innovative and we can look after the ones. We can look after the individual people. And I know there's going to be people in the comments that just go, it's always been about the community. Well, why don't I see it then? Why do I see people who are absolutely obsessed with a number on a screen instead of the people who are genuinely caring? Why aren't we making content? Why aren't we making music? Why aren't we making something that looks after a group of people that will engage, that will work with you so that you can look after them like a community? Inequality in the music industry is nothing new. But this growth of inequality seems to be getting wider and wider, and it probably won't change until there is some new innovation and technology, whether that's new styles of DSPs, new ways of consuming music, or potentially new ways of promoting music. Up until that point, this inequality is going to get wider and wider and wider. So the game is not to compete. The game, when everyone turns left, is to go right. The game is how we look after people, and it needs to be the ones, because the way exponential growth works isn't 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. And that's the way exponential growth works, because these are the people that you need to look after the most. Now, let me finish off by saying this. I'm trying to find a way through this noise for DIY artists. What is the best route for artists to be able to make as much money and get as much noise as possible? But this pisses me off just as much as it pisses you off. Not only are you in a position where the industry is taking the lion's share of opportunities and money from you, but now they've got you working for them and thanking them for it at the same time. It's quite frankly, it's bullshit. But the problem here is, what do we do about that? Because in the comments, people are like, take your music off Spotify. And I'm like, well, now you're cutting your nose off to spite your face, because there is still that one-to-one between you and a fan base. And when I get in my car and I want to listen to music, if you send me something and say, I've boycotted Spotify and now I'm going to SoundCloud, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to listen to your music as much as I want to. It just doesn't fit into the consumption in my life. So it's all very well that we say we can boycott a platform, but right now, that isn't the answer. Everything we have gives you control. The problem is, the more control you have to be able to get your music out there, the more the money is taken off you as some kind of shit trade-off. While this inequality grows, you have to look after yourself as an artist. You have to look after yourself, your progression, your music, and ideally your money as it comes in to be able to move forward. After all, costs of production or promotion, they're not going down anytime soon. So I want to know what your thoughts are. How does this get fixed? Because to me, inequality is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's pricing most artists out, outside of people that are just sat in their bedroom making music, which there's nothing wrong with whatsoever, but it takes a lot of the magic away. The opportunities of going in the studio, the opportunities of going on tour, these things seem to be losing their value. In fact, I heard that nearly 200 venues in the United Kingdom went under last year. 200 venues. I mean, the UK is a small country. We cannot afford to be losing 200 venues. It just means that bands and artists can't go out and perform live. They can't cut their teeth. They can't find ways of monetizing outside of online. It's this inequality gap which is getting wider and wider and wider. Anyway, I want to know your thoughts because it's something I've been thinking about over the last sort of couple of weeks. Let me know in your comments below, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.